Hello, BiggerPockets, friends and family. Paul Moore here, and it's spooky Halloween real estate horror stories. I'm here with my guest, Light Flasher. I will not speak of her name. She's one of those we do not speak of. But I am glad to have you with me today. I want to make sure that you can hear me. So if you can hear me out there, tell me where you're from. Tell me your name. Tell me what you do. And we will be so excited to have you join us on this spooky Halloween horror story show. Okay? So we're going to talk about real estate horror stories from my life and from the life. Okay, that's enough with the lights, okay? Ah! Okay, seriously. Hey, Sherry from St. Petersburg. Thank you for joining. Hey, Jerry from Virginia. I'm from Virginia myself. And I am so excited to be here on this Halloween Eve. And I'm looking forward to answering any of your questions on any real estate related topic. But first of all, I'm going to tell you some stories from my real estate investing career and from my podcast called How to Lose Money. Now, most people can't believe I have a wealth building podcast called How to Lose Money, but Dude Real Estate knows that I do. Thank you so much for joining me. Nate Shields, folks, on the YouTube side, he's going to be helping me answer questions. So if you have questions along the way while I'm still rambling on, you can ask Dude Real Estate. He can try to give you an answer. By the way, if you could share this, or if you could like it or give us a heart or a thumbs up or whatever you folks do, that would be awesome. And let's get started. But first, Jet from Winnipeg. Hello. Hey, Craig, hello. Thank you for joining us. We got folks from Nashville, Vigilant 53. Hey, Shane Grady from Philadelphia. I was just there last weekend. Thumbs up for Philly. Carlos, Kevin. Hey, Jerome. So excited. You're from Florida with one property. Hey, Thomas. Buyer in healthcare. We got to talk about that. We should talk offline, Thomas. I want to chat about real estate healthcare. Hey, Guiano from Montreal, Don, Adam. Okay, thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about some real estate horror stories. Charles Wallace from Wytheville, Virginia. Charles, you won't believe this. My first story is from Wytheville, Virginia. I kid you not. So, I heard about a double wide in Wytheville, Virginia. It was on a 1.5 acre lot with a stream. It was way out in the country, west of town. And so I heard about it from a mobile home dealer who had sold it to these people, and it was trashed. And they said, hey, you could buy this for I think it was $18,000, $20,000 on the land, everything. And so I did, and I got some guys in there to renovate it, and we renovated it. And it was a 3-bedroom, double wide, had a beautiful fireplace. We spent a long time getting it renovated. I went through 3 contractors, and I finally tried to sell it, and I couldn't find a buyer. And so when I did finally find a buyer, they had terrible credit, but I was desperate. So I had I think $38,000 or $40,000 in it total. And I sold it for, I think, $60,000 on a rent-to-own. Now, I'm a big fan of rent-to-own homes, but this was a double wide. And I don't recommend, by the way, buying mobile homes. I have a special report on how to buy mobile home parks, and I'm really into it. But self-storage, mobile home parks, they're awesome if you know what you're doing or if you have a great operating partner. But I was trying to buy a mobile home, and that's the lesson here. Don't do it. Anyway, so I actually rented it out for a 3-year rent to own. At the end of 3 years, she couldn't close. She didn't have the credit score. So I went 4 years. Then I went 5, 6, 7, 8. And she made almost every single payment on time for almost 8 years. And I thought, well, this has turned out pretty good. It's just turned into a long-term rental. I've recouped a huge percentage of the money that I have in it. And she's just a faithful renter. Well, one day I noticed she wasn't making her rental payments, and she hadn't made them for a few months, and then it turned into like 4 months. I finally called her and I said, hey, that was Withville, Virginia, by the way. Charles is 2 hours from where I was in Roanoke. And I said, hey, what's going on? She said, well, my boyfriend and I broke up, and so I subleased the mobile home to a Section 8 tenant, and I had no idea how much trouble it would be. She had no right at all to sublease it, but she thought she did because she was buying it on a rent-to-own. Well, I drove down to Withville, Virginia, Charles Wallace, and I said, hey, do you have the keys? Are they hidden somewhere? She said, I don't know what happened to these people. They haven't returned my calls for like 6 weeks. Well, I got there, and I can tell you that this story involves alcohol or alcoholics. It involves a dog or dogs. It involves a baby or babies and a whole big mess. These people, I could not believe in just 5 or 6 months how they had taken a $60,000 home and completely destroyed it. Like they went out of their way. There was dog poop and all kinds of other unsavory things everywhere. They had scraped the walls, stolen the appliances, stolen the HVAC system, and it was like they were so angry at somebody that they'd never met, and it was really hard to understand. It was painful. And I'll just bottom line it here. I basically, after not being able to do anything with this completely trashed double wide, I was eventually got it hauled off, and I sold that lot for $15,000 because it already had well, septic, and driveway and a foundation there. $15,000. I was supposed to make $60,000. Now I made a lot of money in rent along the way, but it was incredibly painful. So Charles Wallace from Withville, Virginia, thank you for helping me kick that story off. Don't buy mobile homes unless you really, really know what you're doing and you want to stay really hands-on. And a lot of folks, now mobile home parks, completely different. You're renting out dirt. I'm all for it. I'm a huge fan. Another story involved a mobile home. This time, it was the first house I ever flipped. We bought it for $34,000. We put in less than $3,000, sold it for $65,000 for sale by owner the first day. And I took, I think my business partner took his half of the profit in cash. Smart guy. And I took my half of the profit in a trade-in mobile home. It was a 1970 mobile home in a mobile home park near Washington, D.C. And I thought it would turn out really well. So I went up with my friends and we renovated it, painted it, and put it back on the market. There was a huge demand. I mean, it was right outside of D.C., right off I-95, like by 100 yards. And we were able to rent it really quickly. Well, what we didn't realize was this person trashed it. And after about 6 or 8 months, we were back there renovating it again. And then that person trashed it, and we renovated it again. That person trashed it, and this time we just had it hauled off. And we actually got $1,000 for basically letting go of the mobile home park site. So lesson, don't buy mobile homes. And again, I might get some flack on here, but that's okay. You guys can argue with me. I know that a lot of you probably disagree, and that's okay. So that's my second Halloween horror story. A third one is not so distant in the past. I had been flipping homes with a friend of mine, Jack, for about a decade and a half. And my son decided to get into it. Yeah, Jamie, you'd wonder if we really screened the tenants. Well, think about this. If you go D or C class multifamily or D or C class houses, there's certain types of tenants that come with that. I'll just kind of leave it at that. So anyway, my son, Jonathan, decided to get into flipping, and he and I funded this, and I helped him find some houses to flip. And we decided, he said, you know, I like that you and Jack did all these $50,000 homes and turned them into $120,000 homes. He said, I think I'm going to buy a $120,000 home and turn it into a $250,000 home. We're going to do all the best features. We're going to stage it. We're going to do beautiful upgrades and all this. And I'll just bottom line tell you that we did 3 of these. And the first 2, our budget was like $40,000 in repairs each, and we put in like $100,000 each in upgrading these $120,000 homes. So we had like $220 in it, and we sold the first for $250, but net of real estate commission, quite a bit less, and holding costs. So we made like $15 on that. And then the next one, we made almost the same. I think we made about $20,000 on the second one. And remember, this was investing like double or triple what Jack had been doing in partnership with me. And then the third one, we lost about $10,000. That was kind of a money pit. And I could tell you that we got a contractor that was angry with us. He was the complete nightmare on Elm Street contractor. And I'll just tell you, we went into the house, we'd find underwear in the house. And we could tell that he or somebody who had a key had been breaking in and using the house for their own, let's just say, infidelity maybe. Anyway, he messed up everything he touched. And so we didn't pay him for some things that we had to get redone. And he went in and he cut the HVAC lines. He stole the washer and dryer. It was a nightmare. And anyway, we ended up losing like $5,000 or $10,000 on that house. What I learned from that was that Jack was right. Buying $50,000 houses, putting say 20 in them and selling them for $120 for anywhere from a $20,000 to $40,000 profit per house was a lot faster, safer. There was a lot bigger market, a lot better protection in a downturn than buying a $120,000 house, having $250 in it, and then trying to sell it for like $300. And so I'll leave it at that. My son, by the way, now is a real estate investor, and he's in a different asset class, and he's crushing it. So he has always appreciated the lessons he learned flipping these houses, even though it was a small dollar per hour. Another real estate horror story was in Roanoke, Virginia, Charles. And I can tell you that we saw this beautiful Cape Cod that it was in a C class neighborhood. And I just thought, who wouldn't see the beauty and the value of this beautiful Cape Cod house? And I allowed myself to kind of fall in love with the style. It was just just a really, really well done house in a very less than average, sort of declining neighborhood. So anyway, a couple things we did wrong. Number one, we overpaid for it because we thought, well, surely people will see the beauty in this house. Well, first of all, people in C- or C class neighborhoods don't see beauty the same way others do. So I don't think people put a value on that. Second, the neighborhood was declining, and I think we ignored that fact. This was only like the third or fourth flip house we ever did out of, way over 50 or 60 we did total. So that was the second mistake. The third mistake was actually, I guess I really don't regret this, but we were super kind to the sellers of this house. They actually lost it in a foreclosure. We rented them a U-Haul. We brought a bunch of people over to help them move. We did everything we could to care for these people. We were kind. We gave them time to move out. We did everything in our power to be kind, and I don't regret that. But they didn't see it that way. So the last night they stayed there, after we had rented a U-Haul on our own dime and helped them move and done everything we could to help them, and even gave them some cash, I think. The last night they stayed there, they did all kinds of horrible things. In the bathrooms, in the toilets, in the sinks. Thank goodness they just left it to that. But anyway, that was a horror story that I'm really, really glad that we are done with and we long put behind us. My next horror story, Emily Reimer from Lynchburg, Rhea. Thank you for joining us today. Emily, I do have a horror story from Lynchburg, but I'm not going to tell it. It didn't make my top 10. So maybe we can chat about that someday. Next horror story is at Nicholas Lane. I assumed I could subdivide a property. I assumed the county or the state Department of Transportation would agree to subdivide it, and that it would no longer be on a county road, but it would become a private road, and would become a county or a public road. And it didn't happen. So I had like $800,000 invested in the speculation. It turned out really, really good at the end, but it still was a very, very difficult 2 years as I tried to get this subdivided. The lesson was real estate is inherently, I won't say it's safe, but it can be. And I learned the difference between speculating and investing. Speculating is when your principal is not at all safe. It's completely at risk, and you've got a chance to make a profit. Investing is when your principal is generally safe and you have a chance to make a profit. And that's what Warren Buffett does. I've been studying Buffett a lot, and we've designed our company, Wellings Capital, after Warren Buffett's thinking. And we've really designed that by basically betting on the very best operators and trusting them to have the control and do the hard work to get their business up and, basically to the next level. And so we're basically pumping equity into these great companies, and which is exactly what Buffett does. And so very, very happy with where we're at, but it was very, very painful along the way. My next story comes from Moneta, Virginia. That is Smith Mountain Lake. And hey, Jackie and Carlos and Nigel, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Nyan. Good to see you again. From Dallas, White Plains, and Fort Worth. But anyway, the story was I decided if flipping houses made sense, it made more sense to build modular homes. And if modular homes were profitable, it would make more sense to do a stick built. Well, a guy who doesn't know how to put a doorknob on his own bedroom door does not have any business ground up developing a $500,000 home. Yeah, I said it. That was me. So anyway, I was aggressive and I was entrepreneurial. But anyway, the bottom line on it, we had another contractor from HE Double Toothpick. And hell. And he convinced me to buy him a bulldozer. He said, nobody in this whole part of Virginia can rent this type of bulldozer. And so we can't find this type of bulldozer. We got to have a bulldozer to do this grading work. And so he convinced me to buy one. It wasn't that expensive, but, it's the point. It was used. And then he did drywall in this 4,000 square foot home completely wrong. And what happened is the people bought the house. I think it was $515,000. By the way, I was supposed to make an almost $100,000 profit off this. It was a waterfront property. Well, anyway, we painted over the drywall, and thank goodness we were able to get it sold. Beautiful home. I'm just still so happy with the design of this home. Well, a guy went in to do a little touch-up work one day, and he shined a light, a flashlight or a bright light actually, along the walls. And he called me and he said, and by the way, this is a great contractor. He said, I don't know how to tell you this, but all the drywall in the house was done wrong. What? We're talking about like a 4,000 square foot house. He said it's all done wrong. And obviously the inspector and the buyers didn't notice it, but I did. And it's like really wavy. And he said, I don't know what you're going to do. And so I made a really hard, painful decision to call the buyers the next day or maybe that day. And I said, bad news. I know you've already closed. You've already moved all your furniture into this house. It was a vacation home, so they weren't there. The drywall's wrong. Yes, the very expensive painting job's already done. It all has to be redone. And so I actually had somebody go in and re-sand, finish, and then the drywall, and then repaint. That wasn't the worst part. There was all kinds of other bad things about this house, but that $80,000 profit evaporated and it turned into a $40,000 loss. There was all kinds of reasons. And that guy never gave me back the bulldozer. He left town with it. So, man, I got a lot of these. It sounds horrible. Here's my first real estate investing loss. I actually bought a house in another town that I planned to move to someday. Okay, I was making a lot of money at this company, and I bought a house and I decided I'd rent it. It was just this perfect situation. So I thought. It had 19 acres with it, and the person who was selling it said it was like a for sale by owner from a friend of a friend. He said, I'll take $225,000 for it. I said, I have no idea what the price of houses in 1990, what was it, 4 should run in this neighborhood, but $225,000 sounds right. I said, why don't we say $225,000 or the appraisal, whichever is less. Oh boy, did you hear that coming already? Well, appraisers are good people, I'm sure. And it's a very hard job. And if you're an appraiser out there, my hat's off to you. It's tough, but appraisers often take the price that's on the sales contract and all they do is justify it. And now that I've been in real estate for like 20 years, I get it. I didn't then. Anyway, lo and behold, the sales price came back exactly to the dollar what was on the contract. And I thought, okay, the appraisal, $225, that's great. Well, after renting it for a year or two, we decided to make a different choice in life, and we decided not to move there, so we tried to sell it. Well, there was all kinds of problems. There was drainage problems, basement leak, neighbor complained and threatened to sue for some kind of water runoff. Anyway, we finally found out it was only worth about $180,000, and after real estate commission, holding costs, and everything else, we lost over $50,000 or $60,000. You would have thought I would have learned. You would have thought I would have stayed out of real estate. I'm so glad I didn't let it keep me out of real estate investing. But at any rate, yeah, you're right. People do take advantage of nice people. And I've learned a lot since then. And I have a team now of people who think different than me, left brain people who, even though I can be left brain, I can also be very kind. And I have people on the team who are not that way. So I hope that is helpful. Here's a lesson from that. Don't ever say the lower of this price or the appraisal, because it'll come back. The appraisal will inevitably come back in a way that you're not expecting. Okay? Another lesson is maybe don't be too nice of a guy. Be a good person, but do not be a nice person, Nicholas says. Thank you. Okay, great. Yeah, Tennessee is a great state to live in. No property taxes. Okay, so we're going to move on to a couple stories from my podcast. I've got a podcast called How to Lose Money. You can check it out on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or at howtolosemoney.com. So we had a guy who was a wonderful investor from Michigan, and he bought a house a couple thousand miles away in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he thought he was doing pretty well on it. He held it for like 6 years, and the price was creeping up, and he was renting, making a small profit every month. And one of the tenants stopped paying, moved out, and he got a horrible call one day. He got a call from the property manager, and the property manager said, "Your home is a meth house." How would you like to get that call? Now, if you didn't know, a meth house is a toxic waste dump in a box. And so this was a really, really big deal, and it could be extremely expensive to fix. And so I will tell you that he got an expert in there, and this expert actually happened to do meth remediation. Well, you hear the problem with that? This was like 2,000 or whatever miles away. He actually was the one doing the analysis to see if there was meth cooked in the house, and he happened to be the guy who charged a lot of money, like $15,000 or $25,000 to do remediation, which is a really, really big deal to remediate. Some houses end up getting tore down. Well, he didn't think about the problem with having somebody do the lab tests, who's also the one who would charge $15,000 or $25,000 to remediate. Yeah, Nicholas, apparently they vetted the tenant, but he was trusting a property manager 2,000 miles away to vet the tenant. Well, anyway, the house was, it was trashed. And so a guy, I think this guy was on the mobile, like the cell phone with the owner, my friend in Michigan. And he walks in and he goes, he sniffs around. He goes, I can smell meth. This house is definitely a meth house. I can smell it. And then he did the analysis in the lab, and he said, yep, it's meth house, all right. It's going to cost you whatever, $20,000 or whatever to fix. Well, he got this funny feeling about the guy, and thank goodness he trusted that instinct. He spent $3,000 to get a much more expensive lab test done. And that lab test, after spending $3,000, which he thought was just flushing it down the so-called toilet, that lab test showed there was no meth in the house at all. It had just been trashed. He saved himself $15,000 or $20,000 or $25,000. And I don't know, is this an episode of Breaking Bad? Someone said, maybe, Burbs. So anyway, he actually got the house cleaned up, fixed up, rented it back out, and sold it for a really small profit. What he learned was that it didn't make sense for him to actually do a single family portfolio. He decided at that point it was almost as much trouble to do a single family as a multifamily, and so he jumped into large scale multifamily. That's exactly what I also wrote about in my book, The Perfect Investment, jumping up to large-scale multifamily. But he also realized that having a property manager and just a single house that was generating $150 profit a month, a couple thousand miles away made no sense for my friend from Michigan. So he sold that house, sold his other houses, and now he's doing multifamily and succeeding. Another story from my How to Lose Money podcast was from Jay from Southern California. Now, Jay had multifamily across the country, another cross-country story. By the way, if you want to invest out of state, David Green, our own David Green, my friend from BiggerPockets, has a great book on investing in real estate out of state. I highly recommend it. But anyway, Jay had real estate multifamily, and he was paying a contractor that he trusted. I think it was in Georgia or Alabama, but it was across the country for sure. It's on my podcast. Anyway, he was paying him, and this contractor was just sending all these updates. Yeah, I finished this and this and this and that, and I have a whole bunch of units almost done. None of them are ready to move into. Sound familiar? And they're almost ready to move into, but they're not quite ready. By the way, is anybody having trouble hearing me? Andrew says he's having trouble. I just love one person to say you can hear me right now. That'd be great. But anyway, so he finally just got really suspicious. He kept piping this guy money. The guy was over budget. The guy seemed like something was wrong. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Vigilant. Anyway, he finally flew out there, and he checked it out in person. And what he found out was that this work had not been done. He had been sending all this money to this contractor, and there wasn't an appraiser or somebody there from the bank to check it out, which would really help, by the way. And he was sending all this money, sent an enormous amount of money. And what he found out, I don't know how he found out, was that a whole lot of other syndicator, other other multifamily owners had also been sending this guy money, and he wasn't actually doing the work. He was pocketing the money. Check this out. This ended up really bad for this contractor. This contractor was actually murdered. I guess, who knows? But perhaps one of these multifamily owners or somebody he was collecting money from got upset and the guy disappeared. But they somehow figured out he was murdered. Ugh, wow. Hey, another story from my How to Lose Money podcast is, a Ponzi contractor, right? Another story from my How to Lose Money podcast is from David Thompson. Now, David Thompson's familiar to a lot of you on BiggerPockets, and David was doing his first multifamily deal with a large syndicator that a lot of you know about, and he had raised about $1 million. Now, he was partnering with this syndicator, and he was actually a general partner on this deal, I guess. And so he had raised about $1 million in the Dallas area, and he got an email from the syndicator, and it was entitled, subject line, wire instructions. Does that sound troubling to anybody at this point? Well, a lot of you know what's going to happen here. So the wire instructions email came through, and it had a bank account of the syndicator, and he forwarded that to 13 investors. Okay? Well, that was Thursday afternoon. About Monday morning, he was puzzled why no money had come into the bank account. He got a call from somebody, septic tank probably. He got a call from somebody, and he said, they said, hey, my bank just said that bank account you gave me, that account number is fraudulent, that I shouldn't wire money there. Well, to David's credit, he immediately contacted all 12 other investors and said, if you haven't wired money, don't wire it. Well, thankfully, only a handful had wired the money, but it was $225,000. Here's what happened. He got caught in a phishing scheme. Okay? What happened is somebody had intercepted the original wire email, changed the bank account number to their bank in New York that they had just opened up. And all that money, the $225,000, went to that bank account rather than the syndicator's bank account. And so, of course, they got a hold of that bank, and that bank said, sorry, we can't do anything about it. That money was withdrawn, oddly enough, as soon as it came in. And so they went to the FDIC. Surely the government will help, right? Well, the FDIC was not set up to ensure wire transfers, just bank accounts. And so that $225,000 disappeared into thin air. This is a true Halloween horror story. Can you imagine? So what are they going to do? They couldn't blame the investors, and the syndicator wasn't at fault. Actually, the syndicator kind of was, because he shouldn't have sent that email. But of course, people didn't know that 4 years ago, and that this was a new thing. Well, the wire fraud, basically nobody was willing to pay for it. So the guy who raised the money, I think I said Dallas, but I think it was somewhere else in Texas. David lived, Austin. Yeah, the guy who raised the money actually went ahead and reimbursed, basically funded this $225,000 themselves to reimburse this, and the deal went forward. And a lot of these people, the investors, really trust Dave now because he did that, out of his pocket, and he has now got some of them to reinvest. Now, when I was doing research for this show today, Zach Gwynn from BiggerPockets, I actually found a lot of supernatural, spooky horror stories online. I'm literally ghost stories. Now, who knows that if you're selling a house that has either a murder or a famous crime at it or something like the Amityville horror house, you don't have to disclose that to buyers. It's not a material fact, okay? So you don't have to disclose that, at least in my state, in Virginia, because it's sort of like hearsay or it's not a relevant fact. Now, if a buyer someday hears that there was a murder there or there's rumored ghosts on the property, they can go back and try to sue the seller or the realtor. But at least in Virginia, that will not fly. So Dude Real Estate, Nate from Madison, Wisconsin, says that depends on the state. Hey, Ghost, thank you for joining us. Perfect timing. So anyway, I don't know if there's rules in certain states. If anybody here is in a state where you cannot do that, you have to disclose all that, let me know. But I don't know of any states like that. Someone says, Lady Plant says you're from Fairfax County. Yep, I recognize that 703 area code. Used to be our area code too. Well, anyway, so I lived in a house growing up that actually had a legitimate ghost sighting. Now, I've changed and grown a lot since I was 4 years old. Can you tell? Can you believe I said that? Anyway, I have different opinions now about the source of that type of thing. But at any rate, I'll keep my opinions to myself. I saw a ghost named Kara in the house. My mom was using a Ouija board, which I highly, highly recommend that you never do. And yeah, at least from my memory, I think I was actually 5 years old, this ghost materialized there in the house. And so I didn't know, of course, at 5 years old how to get rid of a ghost like that. But I do now, actually. And I'm really treading on some weird territory here. But I'll tell you this. My daughter yesterday came to me and said, my friend who's got all these serious mental, emotional problems came to me, actually gave me this set of cards. And they've been buried in my desk for a long time. Well, she was cleaning out her desk yesterday. And she came to me and she was like breathing hard. She was upset. She said, as soon as I touched these cards, my hands got all clammy. I got scared. My heart started pounding. I couldn't breathe. Something weird is happening in my room. I'm scared. Well, I went up to her room and, I couldn't feel anything, but she's more sensitive about that stuff than me. I knew exactly what to do to get rid of it. And so it didn't scare me. So I didn't really want to delve into this, but Nate Shields, you know what I'm talking about. We were able to get rid of that really quickly, and she hasn't had any problems since. So anyway, if anybody wants to chat about that, we can. That's just kind of a weird little ghost side story. Okay, so we are 38 minutes into our show. I am going to take a minute to grab a drink of water. And here's what I want to do. If Nate Shields is answering all your questions on the YouTube side, that's great. That's Dude Real Estate, by the way. Check his YouTube and other channels out. But if you got any questions on YouTube, Facebook, or BiggerPockets, please copy and paste them down and ask them again, because I haven't been able to get to those questions since I've been rambling on for 37 and a half minutes about all these Halloween horror stories. Okay, Justin from Richmond, thank you for joining. Hey, Jason Green, Mustaf, nice, thank you. Okay, so show the ghost a high interest rate and they'll leave. That's great. All right, Lady Plants a Lot says, burn sage and tell them to go rest elsewhere. Thanks, Lady Plants a Lot. That's not what I did. But anyway, Okay, so someone said I'd be scared they'd put a price on my head. He had a wealthy Nigerian uncle. We're talking about the wire fraud thing. Yeah, I think some Nigerian king told him to wire the money there. Some Nigerian guy just contacted me and offered me like $1 billion if I just give him my bank account number. Huh? Maybe that can be a horror story for next year. I'm kidding. Okay, so Elio, St. Augustine, Jacksonville, Florida. Stories are super intriguing. I appreciate it. Thank you. Give us a thumbs up, a like, or a share. Elio. St. Augustine's Lincolnville is totally haunted. You can hear the chain gang going down Cerro Street. Cerro Street. Wow. Okay. I read a story in my research for this today where somebody said that they lived in a Civil War battlefield. And they have lots of pictures and videos of of ghosts manifesting there. Who knows? I really truly do believe that we live in a world that is full of mystery, and so who knows what's out there. I think there's a lot of stuff that we don't know and don't understand. Scientists study this stuff, and they say there's like a 0.01 to the 158th power chance that all this stuff could be as it is. It's called the certain principle. I can't remember what it's called, but it's in all these scientific journals. The anthropic principle, basically that the moon is at the certain exact right distance from us and from the sun, and the tilt of the earth is 22.5 degrees, and the temperature, if it was 5 degrees hotter or cooler, it would mess up the earth. The oxygen stuff, is the certain content. And so anyway, it's pretty cool. There's lots of stuff we don't really understand, Zach Howard. And I understand, but this is a Halloween horror story day. And so I thought I'd throw in one true ghost story. Sorry if anybody's upset. So Tiffany says, don't do it, LOL. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Okay, so show the ghost your real estate agent. That's great. All right, so somebody says... free real estate guru seminar. Okay, show the ghosts that and they'll be scared off. That's great. Jackie from Fort Worth says 33% of people reported they wouldn't mind living in a haunted house. Seriously? I've never heard that, Jackie. I think if they did for about a day, if they saw The Haunting of Hill House, what's that, on Amazon or Netflix, they wouldn't feel that way, honestly. Now, I wasn't scared because I was stupid. I was 5 years old. Maybe I'm still stupid, but I'm not 5 anymore. Okay, Tiffany says, talking about giving your account information. Yeah, I know, I was teasing. Okay, so, hey, we're about to wrap up here. So, Nate, do you have any questions we need to get answered? Does anybody have any questions for Dude Real Estate or for me that you want to get answered? I've got venison steak, medium rare, being cooked on a grill right outside my window, and the scents are wafting in here. So it's pretty tempting for me to shut this down if I don't get some questions pretty quick. Now, I can answer questions on all kinds of topics, anything related to real estate, electric guitar. No, I'm not going to answer any questions on that. Anyway, and as far as any other personal questions you have about ghosts or anything, I'm not going to touch that anymore. You guys can hit me up on BiggerPockets on my profile. Kia says, hey, Paul, any idea how a U.S. recession will affect markets like South Africa? We've already had our own local recession. Do you think a U.S. recession will cause further problems for South Africa, or do they have independent cycles? To the extent that South Africa is dependent on, U.S. for trade and other things, I absolutely think it could, Kia. And I think, like they say, San Francisco gets a cold and Redding, California sneezes. Or wait, is it Redding? Anyway, you get the idea. I was being silly there. Joseph, yes, thank you so much for asking. I appreciate your question. The answer is yes. Are these live videos Wednesday? This is going to be a Friday show from now on, Jackie. Yeah, not every Wednesday, but these are going to be on Fridays. This is a special Halloween spooky edition. Okay, if you're going to invest in one international market, what would you choose and why? Deborah, you're asking the exact wrong guy. I am super risk averse after making a lot of mistakes in my history. And so I've decided that it makes no sense for me to add an additional layer of currency risk. And so we don't invest out of the U.S. no matter how good it looks. Vigilant says the Fed just lowered the interest rates by 25 basis points again. Okay. Jeremy, it's not a question, but I would just like to thank you for all the information you provide. Thanks, Jeremy. What about, I really truly appreciate it. I can't believe I get to do this, you guys. Seriously, I really do appreciate this opportunity and thank you for showing up. I can't believe you're here and I'm so grateful. Mosier says, what are good methods for advertising your rooms for rent in single family residential? Like a 6-bed, 3-bath near a college campus. Mosier, you're going to want to hit up a friend of mine named Eric. And Eric Eichhoff, Eickhoff, he should be on BiggerPockets. He actually does that in Minneapolis. And so Eric Eichhoff, Minneapolis real estate agent. If anybody else has any ideas, I would definitely go with Eric. But I have opinions only, so I haven't done that. What about buying rental homes that have in-ground pools, says 1911 Cal. Dude, real estate. Nate, what do you think? I think as long as you have good insurance, what I've heard is that the insurance to cover all the liability with a pool is not as expensive as people think. So I think I'd be okay with it. But I think there probably is some liability that you need to take into account. Zach says, doesn't have to be your story, but what's the worst horror story you've heard? Zach, I think the $225,000 wire transfer fraud is the worst in my history. I just can't imagine that. There's obviously worse ones, but Vigilant 53, are real estate prices peaking in the U.S.? Yeah, but here's the problem. Yes, they are. But we can't tell where they really truly peaked until later, until we look back in history. We can only see that they're a peak historically, meaning that they're the highest they've been so far. So imagine real estate prices going up, they're a peak. Up, well, that wasn't a peak. Up again, that wasn't a peak. And so that's what's happening here. And so, if interest rates eventually go negative in the U.S., then some of these 4% cap rate deals that I think are way overpriced are actually going to be a good deal compared to negative interest rates, right? And so I don't really know. Warren Buffett and Howard Marks say that they cannot predict the future, timing of a recession. And so, if they can't, I can't either. Ron Borg, I'm not sure what I don't know, but if you can elaborate, I would be so happy to answer your question or your comment. Okay, so Dude Real Estate says, Vigilant 53, they may have already peaked in some markets as some values have come down, especially in high-priced areas. Like, New York City, San Francisco, some places in LA have already seen some softening. And so I think that is a possible. Real estate, folks, is local. And in some cases, like with self-storage, it's hyper-local. And so you can't really tell till later if and when there was a peak. So Elio, around here prices took a dip. Is that a sign it's now a buyer's market? Elio, I think you're in St. Augustine or Jacksonville, you said. Maybe it could be. I don't really know. We won't really know till later because, San Francisco and LA have taken dips, but then come right back up sometimes. And so it's hard to tell. Have you ever had a crazy damage incident like an alligator tore up your home? No. Well, I mean, I had the story I told at the beginning in Withville, Virginia, and that was worse than an alligator. I mean, seriously. Ron says Florida property is still not where it was in 2006. With rates continuing down, real estate should do well. Thanks, Ron. Jackie says, how are rent prices affected during hard times like a recession? Jackie, usually occupancy drops, but usually I don't think rent prices give as much. Sometimes there are concessions to get people to occupy, but I usually don't think there are very many significant drops in rent. Do you think that bandit signs are actually still effective? I think they are. I really do. And especially as people go away from them, they'll be more effective. Do you know handwritten letters, which were, of course, the norm 50 or 70 years ago, are now more effective since people don't do them anymore as much? Does the year of the property matter? Kevin, yeah. I mean, like I have an apartment building that has cast iron pipes, and I had a $107,000 repair. I guess that's another horror story for our show, because one cast iron pipe failed. And so is that a real estate horror story? Yeah, I think so. So that's a 1962, what's that, a 57-year-old property. Pretty painful. All right, it is 6:06 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are going to wrap up in a very few minutes. Do you have a real estate question of any kind? Yep, that's right, Lady Plants, 107,000. Do you have a real estate question of any kind? If you do, please, asking now. Please ask now. And we're going to wrap this up in a very few minutes. Thanks, Ram Real Estate. Appreciate you. Mustaf Jalil says, check the grill, trailer park deals. Name your webpage for details. Okay, so I usually don't share this, but if somebody wants, I have a mobile home park special report telling how real estate investors are crushing it in investing in mobile home parks, and another one in self-storage. And so in about 5 or 10 seconds, I'm going to tell you where to get those reports. So be ready to write this down or type it. Jackie says, I agree with handwriting letter. I'm a realtor and I do this. Yeah. Okay, so my son has a, not full-time, but a part-time person literally handwriting every letter, every envelope, putting a crooked stamp on, and they're crushing it. Okay? So, thanks, Jackie. Joseph says, what's your take on student housing rentals? I think it's a little bit more, I'd say more dangerous than a lot of people think. I think that with all the online courses, I'm right by Liberty University, a great school in my town, and they only have like 18,000 students on campus, but they have, get this, 100,000 online. What if someday that they all go online? I mean, I'm just saying, it's possible, okay? Well, I wouldn't want to be holding student housing. I wouldn't want to be relying on that. That's my opinion. Tons of people are crushing it in student housing. And so, Joseph, I really believe renting by the room, as long as you have a backup plan to either sell or rent that house or duplex or whatever to other people other than students, I would say that's mitigating the risk. Okay, so if you all want my 5-part course on commercial real estate investing, there are a bunch of reasons I switched from residential to commercial. You can get the 5-part e-course free, or you can get my self-storage special report or my mobile home park investing special report by going to my BiggerPockets profile. Again, I'm Paul Moore with Wellings Capital. You can also put in this website, okay? It's wellingscapital.com/resources. That's WELLINGSCAPITAL, wellingscapital.com/resources. That's RESOURCES. I have special reports on self-storage, mobile home park investing. I have a book I wrote on multifamily. It's called The Perfect Investment. You can get a PDF of that as long as you promise to give me an honest review on Amazon. I'm trying to get to 100 reviews. I'll give you a free copy of my book on multifamily investing. It's a popular book, but you've got to promise to give me an honest review. I'm not asking for 5 stars unless you think it's worth it. But anybody who wants that book, you can go to wellingscapital.com/resources, or thanks Lady Plants a lot, or you can just go to wellingscapital.com and put in an information request. We'll send you the book, but here's my challenge to you guys, my challenge to myself. I have got about another 2 weeks to get to 100 reviews on my book. I've got 90 or 91. I really need to get some more reviews. So if you guys want to help me in this effort, either buy my book if you want a soft cover copy for $15. It's called The Perfect Investment, or go and get a free PDF copy. You can get that at wellingscapital.com or wellingscapital.com/resources. Okay, with no more questions on the board that I can see, I see that there are a few. Adrian, do you have any mailer tips? No, I mean, all the handwriting you can do, it's incredible pain. But you might be able to get somebody, like a high school or middle school student to do it. Thanks, folks. Thanks, Dude Real Estate, my friend Nate. You might be able to find a high school or junior high or, somebody to write your letters for you. And if they look a little sloppy, that's okay, because it's more realistic. You don't want it to look computer generated, my friends. And so, yeah, that's what I would recommend as far as mailers. But seeing no more questions that I've missed. Oh, okay, here's one. Greg Carbett says, I was an amateur investor with a few properties. I'm thinking about getting back into real estate. Would you suggest starting with a small apartment? Greg, yeah, but the problem is they're really hard to find. Extremely hard to find. My book, The Perfect Investment, talks about this exact dilemma and what to do about it. Like I said, you can get a free copy. A flock of 5th graders would be cheap. That's funny. Did you use leverage to finance your first property? No, I used cash. I had sold a company for a couple $1 million back in the 90s, and I was fortunate enough to use cash. However, I highly recommend that you use a safe amount of leverage. It makes so much more sense when you can. Kevin, thank you for your kind words. Yeah, don't miss Brandon Turner's webinar later. It's going to be awesome. Highly recommend it. Okay, you guys are awesome. Like I said, I can't believe I get to do this. I'm so grateful to all of you, my friends, family, co-investors, partners at BiggerPockets. Thank you to Zach Gwynn. Let's give him a big thumbs up. And thank you to the BiggerPockets management and staff. Again, thank you for having me share an hour of your day. Have a great weekend. Have a great Halloween before that. And we will see you on the other side. I see a couple other questions coming in, and Nate Shields is going to try to answer those now. Have a great evening.